Today I'm going to show you how to define a Gorgias-B policy using the Gorgias-B tool. By clicking on the shortcut that I have created on my desktop, I open the Gorgias-B tool, maximize it, and then I'm creating a new project. I will name it request policy. .pl. You don't forget the .pl extension. Alright, so what are my options here? The first option is that when a request comes from an agent for a resource, I can challenge. So I have the option to challenge an agent who requests a resource. Take care when you define the parameters of a predicate to have them start with an uppercase letter so that they are variables, while the predicate must always start with a lowercase letter, like lowercase c here for challenge, while agent, that is a variable, it can be any agent that has requested a resource. So it's a variable, and the same holds for resource, so we have uppercase letters. So I create this option. Another option is to refuse the request for a resource by an agent, and another one is to give the resource to the agent. These are the three different options that I have. Now, at this part of the screen here that says incompatible options, I have to define them as incompatible. So challenge is incompatible to refuse. That means that they're complementary, they cannot happen at the same time. And also give is complementary to refuse, and also give is complementary to challenge. You see them added here in both ways. Challenge is complement to refuse, and refuse is complement to challenge. And the same for all these pairs. Here, if you want a specific incompatibility to be removed, you can select it and click this button, but this is for experienced users. Now I have all my options here. I can go to the next screen here, where I define the arguments for these options. I read here at my requirements that normally I challenge a request from another agent for a resource. So when there comes a request by an agent for a resource, you see I'm typing here, I'm creating a new predicate here. I can type in this combo box where I can see all my predicates. Until now I have defined none, so I had nothing here, but now this will be inserted in the database. So when a request from an agent for a resource comes, I challenge. So if I want this predicate here that is supporting information for this option to be inserted in my argument, I add this predicate. Here is a dialog asking me if it's a diffeasible or non-diffeasible knowledge. Okay, it's non-diffeasible knowledge. So I can preview here my rule. It says when a request from an agent for a resource comes, choose challenge. I add this argument. Now this argument is part of the Gorgias-B policy. I have another argument here for refuse. I read in my requirements, if you need the resource yourself, refuse the request. It says there, unless the request is for a common project. But this common project there is a specific context. It's not a general. General is that if I need the resource for myself, refuse the request. So I will stay there and define this rule. So let me define the need. Need. When I need this resource, here is a predicate. Need resource. Add this predicate. It's non-diffeasible. I need it. Okay, when need resource, choose refuse. I want this argument. I forgot to add the request from the agent, so I choose it and remove it. I have to start from scratch, refuse, but now I don't have to write the need resource. I have it there. You need resource, choose refuse, but also I need the request from an agent. This is another premise. Add this predicate. So when I need a resource and an agent requests it, I choose to refuse. Add this argument. Good. And then I have another option that is to give it. So if the request comes from my manager, I accept to give it. There's also an exception here, but I will see it in the next level. So now I'm writing the argument here that I would give the resource to someone who requests it if it's my manager. So if it's manager, if this agent is a manager, add this predicate. It's non-divisible. So when an agent requests a resource and he's a manager, I choose to give it. Good, add this argument. So now my arguments are complete. I see there are some exceptions, and I will take care of them in the next level. So I press this button here to resolve the conflicts. Here. And now I can see here all the possible scenarios that come. So I have a scenario where I need the resource and someone requests for it. And what are the competing options here? The refuse and challenge. So when I need the resource in general, as we said before, I choose to refuse. So I add this model. However, if the request is for a common project, I will do what I do normally, which is to challenge. So I select challenge when I have a common project with this agent or this resource. Okay, so I add this predicate, it's not divisible. Alright, so when I have a common project, I select challenge. Okay, add this model. Alright, so in general, when I need a resource, I prefer to refuse it over challenge it. However, when it's a common project, it's vice versa. I will do the same for the next scenario, where is my manager, and when he requests something, I normally give it. So I will add this model without any context. However, in the context that I'm already using it, so when I'm using the resource here, oops, it's not divisible, but not give, I select challenge when I'm using this resource. So challenge, select challenge in model using resource. Okay, add this model. So when the agent is my manager and I'm using a resource and he requests for it, I prefer to challenge over giving it. Good, this is also complete. Here, Gorgias-B proposes another scenario where I need a resource. I have my manager and he requests a resource, but I have no requirements regarding that, so I don't touch it for now. I don't touch it at all. And I go to the next level to see until now what are the conflicts that I have. So you see here that when I need a resource and I have a common project and an agent requests the common project, what do I do there? I challenge. So I challenge, add this model, and now this is fixed. And I go to the other scenario for the manager who requests a resource that I'm using, and now I have to challenge it. So if I try now to go to a next level, I don't have any scenarios. Because in the third level, everything is fixed. Here you see I only have a default preference. So this is fixed. Alright, this is how I define this policy that we have here at our requirements. I will try to run a scenario to evaluate it. So if Nikos asks for a hammer at this fact, and I need this hammer. I need this hammer at this fact. Okay? Now let's see, is it possible to challenge Nikos for the hammer? Let me explore this option. I need the hammer and Nikos requests it. There's no solution for it. However, if I select to refuse to give to Nikos the hammer, let's see what happens. Is it a viable answer? Yes, I have an argument for this option. And the argument is that when I need the hammer and Nikos requests it, I choose to refuse it. Now, let's say that I have a common project with Nikos and the resource hammer. Okay, is it now a viable option to refuse it? Let me check. Now Java, that is this application, requests Prolog to do reasoning, and you see there's no solution now. If I see if it's viable to challenge Nikos for the hammer, I will see that this is the right thing to do in this situation. And you see this, have two arguments for it. Alright, thank you very much. This was my tutorial for today.